Have you ever wondered what secrets lie hidden beneath London's parks? Beneath Crystal Palace Park, a forgotten masterpiece waits. A subway unlike any other. A gateway to one of Britain's greatest wonders. Once home to a glittering glass palace that dazzled the world, this hidden underground cathedral tells a story of ambition, fire, and rebirth. The story begins in 1851, when Britain hosted the Great Exhibition in London's Hyde Park. This was more than just an event. It was the first World's Fair, designed to showcase Britain's industrial power and artistic achievements on a global stage. But such an ambitious exhibition needed a building unlike anything seen before. And here's Joseph Paxton. He wasn't a traditional architect, but a gardener and greenhouse designer, known for his pioneering use of glass in large conservatories. Paxton proposed a radical idea, a vast glass and iron structure, assembled not with stone or brick, but with prefabricated modular parts. This meant it could be built quickly, dismantled, and even reused. What emerged was the Crystal Palace, a building covering 990,000 square feet, stretching 1,848 feet in length and enclosing 128 feet in height. It was constructed from over 300,000 sheets of glass, making it the largest area of glass ever used in building at the time. Sunlight poured in from every angle, flooding the interior with natural light and creating an atmosphere unlike anything people had ever experienced indoors. For visitors, it wasn't just a building, it was a symbol. The Crystal Palace embodied Britain's age of confidence, a nation at the peak of its industrial might, declaring to the world that it could dream bigger, build faster, and shine brighter than anyone else. The Crystal Palace dazzled millions during the Great Exhibition of 1851, but there was one problem. The exhibition was only temporary. Once it closed, the question loomed: what would happen to this glass giant? Would it simply vanish, dismantled piece by piece like a passing fairground attraction? The answer came just a few years later. In 1854, the entire structure was dismantled in Hyde Park and carefully transported to Sydenham Hill in South London. There, it was not only rebuilt, but expanded into something even more ambitious. This was no longer just an exhibition hall. It became one of the grandest leisure destinations of Victorian Britain. The grounds around the palace were transformed into a vast pleasure park. Imagine strolling through terraced gardens lined with fountains, marble statues, and sweeping staircases, all designed to impress and inspire. Families could wander through glass houses filled with exotic plants, or marvel at grand performances and exhibitions inside the palace itself. And then came one of the quirkiest attractions, the Crystal Palace dinosaurs. Built in the 1850s, these life-sized sculptures were the first attempt anywhere in the world to recreate dinosaurs in 3 dimensions. They weren't exactly accurate by today's science. Some looked more like giant lizards than fearsome beasts, but for Victorian visitors, they were jaw-dropping. In many ways, the Crystal Palace became a Victorian Disneyland, a mix of spectacle, education, and entertainment where industry and imagination collided. If the palace above ground could inspire such awe, what kind of marvel might be waiting beneath it? Because in the 1860s, a hidden underground cathedral was built, and for many, the journey through it was as magical as the destination itself. By the mid-19th century, the Crystal Palace was more than just a landmark. It was a magnet for crowds, and with crowds came the need for better transport. So, in 1865, a new line was built to carry visitors directly to the Gates of Wonder, the Crystal Palace High-Level Station. But here's where it gets fascinating. Instead of simply building a bland station walkway, the Victorians created something extraordinary, a hidden gateway that felt more like a cathedral than a subway. Designed by Charles Barry Jr., son of the man who co-created the Houses of Parliament, the subway became a masterpiece in its own right. Step inside and you'd be surrounded by soaring red and yellow brick vaults, arranged in patterns that looked almost Moorish or Byzantine. The curved arches stretched above like the ceiling of a palace, while the intricate brickwork glowed under the flicker of gas lamps. Imagine the effect: warm light bouncing off coloured stone, casting long shadows that made the hall feel sacred, almost otherworldly. And here's the question: how many railway subways have ever felt like places of worship? For Victorian visitors, the journey didn't just begin on the train, it began the moment they walked through this vaulted passage. You can almost picture it. Families stepping off the platform, children tugging at their parents' hands, hearts racing as they passed beneath the glowing arches. With every step, the anticipation built until at last they emerged into daylight, and there, rising before them, stood the great Crystal Palace itself. This wasn't transit, it was a theatre. The subway wasn't designed to move people simply, it was designed to heighten the sense of awe, to prepare visitors for the spectacle waiting above. For decades, the Crystal Palace stood as a beacon of Victorian imagination. But all great spectacles, no matter how grand, carry the shadow of an ending. And for the palace, that ending came on a cold night in November 1936. It began innocently, a small fire inside the building. But with so much timber, glass and iron, the flames spread like lightning. Within hours, the Crystal Palace was ablaze, its glass panes shattering in the heat, its mighty framework glowing red as if the building itself had become a furnace. The inferno could be seen for miles. Londoners poured into the streets and hillsides, watching in stunned silence as their city's crown jewel burned. Some wept, others stood frozen. How do you even begin to process watching a national treasure disintegrate before your very eyes? Newspapers the next morning captured the mood. London's light extinguished. Headlines screamed of tragedy, and perhaps the most famous words came from Winston Churchill, who stood among the crowd that night. He said simply, "This is the end of an age." By dawn, it was over. The proud palace that once symbolized Britain's industrial power lay in ruins, reduced to smoking iron and broken glass. For many, it felt like more than the loss of a building. It was the loss of Victorian optimism itself. The Crystal Palace had embodied a nation at its most confident, most daring. Now, in a single night, that spirit was gone. But while the flames had destroyed the palace above ground, one part of its story, hidden beneath, had quietly endured. When the flames died down in 1936, London awoke to a void. The Crystal Palace was gone, its proud silhouette erased from the skyline. All that remained were fragments, terraces stripped bare, broken statues, and a charred emptiness where once there had been light and glass. The high-level station, built to serve the palace, limped on for a while, but without its shining destination, passenger numbers dwindled year by year. By the 1950s, it felt like a ghost station, waiting rooms empty, tracks overgrown. In 1961, the wrecking crews arrived and the once grand station was demolished, as if trying to erase a reminder of what had been lost. Even the gardens and fountains fell into neglect. Statues toppled, staircases cracked, and weeds overtook the terraces. For many, it seemed as though the Crystal Palace was being slowly erased, not just from the landscape, but from living memory. And yet, one piece refused to vanish. Buried beneath the ground, scarred but still standing, lay the subway. Half collapsed, closed off, and forgotten by most, but not by everyone. Locals whispered about the hidden brick vaults, remembering the glow of gas lamps and the magic of their childhood visits. It makes you wonder, how do you keep the spirit of a place alive when the building itself no longer exists? For the people of South London, the answer was community. Decades later, groups like the Friends of Crystal Palace Subway formed, determined to preserve what little was left and protect this secret gateway for future generations. The palace was gone, yes, but its memory endured, etched into the bricks and into the hearts of those who refused to forget. For many years, the subway lay in silence, locked away, half buried, a relic that only a handful of locals even remembered. But memory has a stubborn way of resurfacing, and in the late 20th century, whispers turned into action. Community groups, most notably the Friends of Crystal Palace Subway, began campaigning to save what remained. What started as a grassroots effort grew into something bigger, as historians, architects, and everyday Londoners joined forces. Their determination eventually brought in official backing from historic England and the London Borough of Bromley. By the early 2000s, the once-forgotten subway was being carefully restored. Brickwork was repaired, arches reinforced, and decades of debris cleared away. When the doors finally reopened for special events, the response was overwhelming. Crowds stretched down the park, waiting patiently just to step inside. Some older visitors were brought to tears, seeing once again the glowing vaults they remembered from childhood. Why does a space like this matter so much when the Grand Palace above it has been gone for nearly a century? Well, because the subway wasn't just a means of transportation, it was an experience. And now, in its rebirth, it has taken on a new life. Today, this hidden cathedral has hosted weddings, concerts, community markets, and even art installations. Its arches echo not only with history, but with new stories being written beneath them. What was once thought lost forever has become a living monument. Proof that memory, when cherished, can bring even forgotten wonders back into the light. The rebirth of the subway didn't just preserve a local landmark, it reignited a conversation about the legacy of the Crystal Palace itself. Because while the building may have vanished in flames, its influence never really disappeared. Architecturally, the palace was a revolution. Paxton's bold use of prefabricated modular construction set a precedent that spread across the globe. Exhibition halls in Paris, train stations across Europe, even the steel and glass skyscrapers that now dominate modern skylines all owe a quiet debt to that shimmering structure in Hyde Park. Culturally too, the palace left its mark. The exhibitions it hosted in Sydenham introduced generations to new technologies, art and ideas. Even the local football club, Crystal Palace FC, carries its name, a reminder of the building's enduring presence in London's identity. And then, of course, there is the subway, the last tangible fragment. Walking through its vaulted arches today is like stepping into a ghost of Victorian Britain. You don't just see bricks, you feel the ambition, the confidence, and the imagination of a nation that once believed no dream was too big to build. How many buildings can truly claim to have shaped both the skyline of the future and the memory of a nation? The Crystal Palace can. Though its glass walls are gone, its story continues to echo, in steel and concrete across the world, in the pride of a football club, and in the quiet, glowing arches of the subway beneath Sydenham. To walk there today is to walk through Britain's forgotten dreams, a reminder that even when monuments fall, their spirit endures. As we leave the subway's glowing arches, imagine the camera pulling back. From the tiled vaults underground to the strange Victorian dinosaurs resting in Crystal Palace Park, and finally to the glittering modern skyline of London. Each layer tells a story, all connected by one extraordinary vision in glass and iron. The Crystal Palace was more than a building. It was a promise that human ingenuity could create wonders, that imagination could be built, and that the future was something you could literally walk inside. Though the flames of 1936 reduced it to ashes, its memory still burns bright, woven into London's identity and echoed into architecture around the world. Walking those subway steps today isn't just about nostalgia, it's about remembering what ambition looks like. Bold, risky, and unapologetically ahead of its time. So here's a thought. The Crystal Palace may have vanished, but its dream hasn't. The question is, what dreams of our age will still echo a century from now? If this journey through history moved you, drop a comment below. Would you have wanted to see the palace in its prime? And that's all about it. If you liked this video, please give a thumbs up, and if you like more updates, subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to click on the bell icon so you don't miss any videos and get notifications on time. And don't hesitate to give suggestions for our new videos. We'll see you in the next one.